Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sian. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more. There are loads of helpful videos on this channel and I'm sure you'll find something that you like. Here in my Harry Potter jumper today. I love this jumper. Promise I'm a grown-up, but you know, sometimes grown-ups just wear Harry Potter jumpers. Right, I'm going to show you what I have read this month. There were 5 books in total, which I'm actually quite impressed with because 2 of them were really tough going. Also, my son managed to smash the glass in like the library door window. So yeah, my backdrop is a bit odd with glass on one side and not on the other. Anyway, right, the first book I read this month is called Less by Andrew Sean Greer. There was a load of books that my mum bought my husband for his birthday and this is one of them. And this is a story about Arthur Less, who is an author, and he basically, he's split up with his boyfriend and his boyfriend is getting married, and so he has decided that in order to not go to the wedding, he's going to basically say yes to everything he's invited to. So he ends up on this kind of whirlwind tour of the world really, and trying to kind of come to terms with obviously the fact that his boyfriend is marrying someone else and the fact that his publisher doesn't want to publish his latest book. And it's quite a good book. What I really struggled with this book was the style of writing, and my husband really enjoyed it, so it's clearly something that's my problem. I just found it really quite hard to kind of get into. There were chapters, but they were kind of very, very long chapters and they were split up. But what I found very hard was the way that Arthur Less kind of flits in and out of the present and the past. And it's literally done like sentence by sentence. So there's no kind of like past, present. It's all quite fluid. So sometimes you're not entirely sure what's going on. I also thought that the ending was a little bit predictable. But I did enjoy reading it, but it did take me a very long time to read. And I think that's purely because of the kind of the style of writing. It's not any other reason other than that. The second book I read this month is called Slave by Anna with Jason Johnson. And this was recommended to me by my dad's partner, and she said she'd just finished reading it and it was absolutely incredible, basically. So it follows a true story of a lady called Anna who was snatched off the streets in London and trafficked into the sex industry. And Anna was somebody who no one really missed. Literally only one of her friends kind of tried to find her. Anna is Romanian and she's come to the UK to study, and she's had a kind of relatively volatile childhood and left her mum and her mum's boyfriend, who doesn't like her, in Romania, and she's moved to England. She kind of got married just for a visa, but she's moved over here, she's studying, she's kind of getting on with stuff, starts her own business cleaning people's houses, and life is kind of going really well until that is she's snatched off the street. And she's snatched so simply and so quickly and so easily, and she's taken to Ireland. They obviously have her passport, so they'd kind of pre-planned who they were snatching, how they were snatching her, all that kind of stuff. And it follows this horrific tale of her working in the sex industry and being unable to escape because she can't have her passport. She has no way of escaping, and if she does escape, these people are going to track her down, and they keep telling her they're going to hurt her mother. So it is, as I said, it's a horrific story because it's true, and it just makes it that much more terrifying that this happens in the UK now. Like, this is not something that happened 30 years ago, this is now. This is something that's happening to people right whilst I'm talking to you. They are being stolen, they're being sold for money, and it's horrific. And I flew through this book because I wanted to know that she was okay at the end of it. I wanted to know that it all ended okay, if it can ever end okay after you've been snatched like that. It is an incredibly powerful book. It's so raw and honest and heartbreaking, and I think that you should all read it. Not because I think it's a great read, but because I think it's an important thing to read. It's so important that we know that stuff like this is going on in our country right now, and I was so shocked by it. But I do think it was really important to read, and I did fly, like I said, it flowed really easily. I read it really quickly because I wanted to know that she was all right. The third book I read this month is called Mother by Hannah Begbie. This is the Mumsnet Book Club book for October. It is about a family, a lady called Kath, her husband called Dave, and their daughter Mia. Now Mia is a baby who is very long anticipated. They discovered that they couldn't have children kind of naturally, so they've gone down the IVF route. But 24 days after Mia is born, it's kind of diagnosed that she has cystic fibrosis. Now cystic fibrosis is a deadly disease. It is debilitating, but children can have a relatively normal life, initially at least, with it. And what I think this book does really well is raise the awareness of cystic fibrosis, of the fact that children with cystic fibrosis can't meet each other, or kind of like in real life they can't get together because they run the risk of passing on deadly bacteria to each other. And in this book, Kath's life is spiralling out of control, as you can totally understand her life would be after such a diagnosis. She goes to a cystic fibrosis support group, and at that support group she meets a dad of a child with cystic fibrosis called Richard. He is a very debonair guy, a bit kind of egotistical, very sure of himself, very confident, very good looking. I didn't really like him straight away, but he tells Kath all the things she wants to hear, like the fact that there could be a cure in the future for this disease. So, you know, she's going to cling on to that as tight as she can, and things in her marriage are not going well, but she is obviously drawn to Richard in many ways, and they start having an affair. Now this affair could kill her daughter because he has a child who has cystic fibrosis. They're not really meant to touch, you know, the parents of children with cystic fibrosis, different children, shouldn't really be touching. So at the support group they're like making sure they clean their hands, they don't shake hands, all that kind of stuff. So Kath is putting her daughter's life in danger by embarking on this affair, and you can kind of understand why she heads down the affair route, because of the way her life is spiraling. But I found it really difficult to read knowing that she could be killing her daughter. You know, it's such a huge risk that I just don't know that many parents would take, but then maybe I'm wrong. It was an easy book to read, and I really think it does raise awareness of cystic fibrosis really well, even though it's not done in like a typical kind of way. So I enjoyed that book. The fourth book I read this month is called Do Not Disturb by Claire Douglas. This is a book that was given to me by one of my friends. It was left in her holiday cottage, and she said, "Oh, I thought you might like it." Now, when I read the blurb, it's basically about a family who run a B&B, which I do. The B&B is in Wales, and it's literally set where my mum lives in Wales, and there's a woman called Sian in it, and there's a murder that happens in the B&B, and I was just like, do I really want to read this? Am I going to get completely freaked out? Am I not going to be able to ever welcome B&B guests into my home again? But I was too tempted not to read it. So read it I did. And I actually really enjoyed it. I didn't get freaked out. I thought it was really well written. It was interesting to see the kind of fact that they'd moved from London into this very kind of rural community, and the fact that people in that community really resented that. But there was also a lot of history with Kirsty, who's the main character, and her husband has had kind of a mental breakdown not that long ago. Their children are struggling to fit in the village, and it's a really interesting book. Basically, Kirsty's childhood friend Selena comes to stay, and Kirsty and Selena had fallen out quite a long time ago, so they haven't spoken for many years. Selena gets murdered while she's staying at the B&B, standard, and the book is about trying to find out who did it, basically. And it's definitely someone who I didn't think would have done it, which obviously makes it interesting. It was an enjoyable book. I finished it really quickly. And for something that someone just handed to me and said, oh, I think you'd enjoy this, it was a brilliant read. So yes, I really recommend reading that one. Final book I read this month is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. This was the Bookish Mama's Book Club read for September. I am not a classics fan. You might want to shoot me down for that, but I don't particularly enjoy them. I found this really hard to read. Although, in its defence, it does read quite nicely. It's got very tiny words though. And I do struggle with reading tiny words because yeah. Anyway, it's got loads of tiny words. It's quite long-winded. It's very dated. I found it really difficult to read about the struggles of women back then because it's not that long ago. But I felt it really hard to kind of understand that oppression and the fact that if your husband was cheating on you and, you know, basically making you look really stupid, there was nothing that you could do about that. So I found that really hard because obviously now you can do something about it. You can get divorced and you can walk away. And Helen in this book can't do that. And not only can she not do it, she would kind of be like shunned from society if she did do it. So the book starts with a guy called Gilbert who lives in the village, basically kind of his story of him falling in love with Helen, who is a widowed woman who's living at Wildfell Hall with her young son. And then that's kind of the start of the book. Then a large chunk of the book is basically Helen's journal, or her diary, which she's written to basically get all her thoughts and feelings out there. And she is really struggling with life in general, really. Her husband is just off enjoying life, leaving her and her child at home. She can't really, like, you know, like now you'd just call them up and say, get back home, you know, you're making me look stupid, and you'd sort it out. But then it was like, you know, he was off in London and she couldn't get the horse and carriage to there. I just found it quite depressing that women were so oppressed then, and that now we still are, but, you know, not anywhere near to the same degree. But I did finish it, although it did just creep over into October, because I just found it quite hard to read. It probably took me nearly 2 weeks to properly finish it. If you like classics, it's probably a great classic to read. It reads easily. My mum said, oh, I love that book. So from that recommendation, I'm guessing it's a good classic. If you like classics, you'll probably love it. If you don't like classics, don't read it. And that is it, the 5 books I read in September. Let me know what you read. Give me some recommendations of things to read because my to be read pile is going down. Only a little bit. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give us a thumbs up. If you'd like to, please subscribe and I will see you again soon. Alright, bye!